Hey everybody, welcome to J Stern Designs. Today is the day after Christmas. I hope everybody is having an amazing holiday season. I just want to show you one of my happy gifts I got for Christmas. I got one of those hydro flasks so I can drink more water, and I'm very excited about it because it does keep things really cold for a really long time. But the reason why I'm super excited about it is I've got this full of ice water and I can put it right down on my pattern paper because there's no condensation on the outside of the bottle. So I'm super excited about this because I can use it as a pattern weight, and also I can keep it closed so I remember to drink more water. So super excited about this. All right, so the thing I want to work on today is the project I'm working on where I showed you how to take apart the jeans and then put them back together. I want to admit that I made a boo-boo, and I want to show you really quick. We're going to look at the center back piece. I had showed you how to measure from the inside edge of the flat felled seam here and then add what I thought was the seam allowance. So from here to here I was adding that 1/2 inch seam allowance in so I wouldn't have to add it after I traced the pattern. And then I realized that that was a boo-boo. Okay, so the actual seam line is right here. Okay, it's not on the inside where I thought when I told everybody to measure from here out, draw the line, cut it off, and your seam allowance would be included. So I just want to point that out because that's a boo-boo. And you know, just to show you, I took apart the bottom of the flat felled seam. The seam allowance that gets turned under is right here on the inside edge. So from here to here gets turned under. And then the shorter one actually gets tucked into the larger one in a real flat felled seam like that. So I wasn't adding seam allowance. I not only cut off what I thought was a seam allowance, but I also cut off this width of the jeans. So from this edge right here to here actually needs to be added back on plus the seam allowance. So the note I had here before said I included seam allowances. I'm just going to measure what it actually is, 3/8 of an inch. So I have to add 3/8 inch for the flat felled seam plus seam allowance. Okay, so along the seam, that's what I have to do. And the reason why I'm pointing this out to you is because if you are working on a pair of jeans and something funny happens along the edge, make a note of it right on the leg so when you go to transfer it to paper, you'll have all the information in front of you. The lesson learned here is, you know, double check before you cut things off. Make sure you understand what you're cutting off when you're separating your pieces. If you're going to cut off the entire flat felled seam and it's on the side that is included in the width of the pattern piece, then you have to add the width of the seam plus the seam allowance. And you can tell because the folded edges of the flat felled seam are on the side that the width is included in, because it's all folded to that side. This is really part of this side of the leg. I made a note of that and we'll deal with that in a minute. All right, so one more thing I want to show you before I get going with showing you how to actually trace the pattern pieces. What you want to do is you want to make a grain line guideline, and you also want to make notches along the legs that help you sew it together properly. And when you are working with your jean pattern, the inseams might be slightly different in length. The front inseam may be a little bit longer than the back inseam. So to make sure you transfer that over properly, what I did was I created knee notches. So where it would sew together at the knee. And anything from the knee to the hem has to be equal. So the front inseam and side seams need to equal the back inseam and side seam. So what I did was I measured up from the hem 16 inches and I drew a line across both legs. And then I also measured and found the center of the bottom portion of the legs and I drew a vertical line. That's going to be the grain line. Okay, so then I'm going to transfer the vertical line all the way up to the top of the pattern, make it the grain line. And I'm going to do the same thing in the back. And then I also have notches to sew the legs together, and I'll be able to tell what the difference is in the inseam from the knee to the crotch, front to back, when we go to true the pattern up later. So I just wanted to point that out. Now let's look at the front. The front I've already traced just to save time, but I do want to talk about some of the things that are a little bit specific to the front leg. The first thing is you want to make sure you cut apart the leg from the pocket bag and then have it lay flat. Okay, and what you're going to notice is that the leg extends past the pocket bag. So you can see this part of the leg sticks out about 1/4 of an inch past where the pocket bag finishes. And the reason why it does that is because when it's sewn together, then it makes ease to put your hand in. The other thing I want to show you is this portion of the jeans had some really tight darning in there. You know, there was interfacing and some holes were darned up. And I think what it did was it sucked up this fabric, because I really don't think the pattern dips in. I'm just going to draw a dashed line here so you can see what the shape is, and then dips back out. All right, so what I did was I just trued it up. So I sort of said, okay, from here to here seem accurate, and I'm just going to, you know, true it up and make it a little bit straighter. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, you can see my dashed line is where that bite was taken out. You can see that's more of a natural shape to sort of even out the edge. The other thing is where the legs stuck out over here, you can see about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so then what I did was when I traced the top of the leg, all right, so I just used my French curve to blend that back to equal a few inches down from the base of the pocket. Okay, so you can see I just went like this, evened it up, okay, and then I'm allowing the leg portion to stick out here. Okay, so the front leg is this part, and then when I make the pocket bag pieces, that will be this pencil line. You want to make sure that your center front is at a 90-degree angle or close to it. You want to make sure that you're straight and then you curve out. And you can see I initially dashed it. Okay, so when I was tracing the top of the waist, okay, I didn't draw a solid line here. I just dashed in, and then I used my ruler and I made a nice smooth shape. Okay, so that's how I got that nice smooth shape for the top of the waist of the leg. I also marked where the front pocket opening started here, and then also I have it, this is where it starts on the side. Okay, so I marked those. And then I sort of drew in the basic shape of my front pocket. Okay, you can see that that's a pretty good representation. Now, the cool thing is, like, let's say these are your favorite jeans, but you always wish the pocket open was bigger. You can make it bigger. You can make it any shape you want now that it's in paper. So don't feel like you have to stay with that shape, but I just transferred it over as closely as I could just for this example. So that's how the front looks. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how to do it again on the back leg. And if you have a long ruler, you can start by making a long line down the length of your paper. One of my favorite rulers is my 48-inch ruler. I love this ruler. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a line, and I'm going to use the grid on my paper that I have here, straight down. And then I'm going to use my knee position on the front, and I'm going to line up my ruler so they're going to be at the same location on the paper. So I'm just going to extend that line all the way across. I don't know, like that. All right, so that'll be the position for the knee on my back. Okay, so now we just fold this in half to make it easier. I'm going to take my leg and I'm going to lay it on the paper so that the vertical line is lining up with the vertical line on my paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a pin in here, and I'm going to see how I'm off. Right, but pin, so I'm just going to move the pin to the crosshairs. I'm going to make sure that's laying exactly where I want it. So if I look now, see it's right there, okay? And I'm just going to pin it in place right there. And then I can also make sure that my bottom is lining up with the line. You can see it's there. Okay, and I'm just going to put one pin right there. So this process is the same for the front and the back. Pinning it to the paper will mean it's not going to slide anywhere. All right, so I have this laying nice and flat now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace the top part of the leg. I'm going to use my pencil. And over here at the crotch, the base of the crotch, you can see it seems like it peeks out kind of suddenly, and it's a little wonky here because, you know, it is stretched out of shape a little bit. You know, there's a hole here. Okay, so I'm gonna have to probably play with that later, but just to get the basic shape, I'm just gonna start at the tip and I'm just gonna make dashes. And I'm gonna make a bracket, one going up and one going down. Okay, so that's gonna be the point of my crotch. Okay, so I've got that in position. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to dash. Okay. And I'm just going to dash right to my knee line. Okay, and when I get to my knee line, I'm just going to make sort of a darker dash like that. All right, and I'll make a darker dash over here. And then I'm going to dash up the center back seam. And again, I'm going to make that bracket here. Okay, so where it meets. Like that. And then I'm just going to make the bracket on the side. Like that. And then I'm just going to dash down to the knee. Then at the very base of the pattern, I'm just going to make a bracket at each side seam and inseam and hem like this. Okay? All right, let's take this off and look at it. All right, so let's do the bottom first. So you can see I've got guidelines at the knee and I've got them at the hem. It's very easy to finish this portion of the pattern. All I'm going to do is connect my lines. Okay, so I don't have to trace the whole bottom portion of the leg. I'm just going to trace this. I'm going to connect them. It's like connecting the dots. Okay, all right. And then I'm going to connect this. All right, so that finishes the bottom portion of my leg. Basically, from the very top portion of the center back, I'm just going to draw a straight line that's following my dashes. Okay, because the top part of your center back seam is straight usually. Okay, then we have a curve here, so I'm just going to use one of my curves, and I'm going to do that. Okay, and because I cut off that felled seam, I have to add 3/8. So I'm going to just do that right now so I remember. I'll add the seam allowance later, but I want to make sure I put this in here. Okay, because that also extends this. Okay, so I'm going to erase this now because this is nothing. And I'm just going to extend this like that. All right, so that's my center back curve. And then I'm going to use my ruler to again make a curved inseam. And I'm not going to curve it in and curve it out. I'm exaggerating, but that's what the shape is doing there in a more subtle kind of way. I'm going to sort of just have it be more like this, and then just sort of have it curve from there to there. Okay, So the shape is very similar. I'm just fine tuning it. And I'm very interested to see what this is going to look like. It's a very shallow crotch curve in the back there. So I'll be interested to see how that works out. But if I put the leg back, okay, you can see that that's really what the shape is. I've added in the 3/8 that I cut off, but you can see that that is the shape. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. Over here, I'm going to just use my straight ruler to do the top of the leg. Okay, so I'm just going to connect those brackets that I made. And then I'm going to use the straighter part of my French curve to just draw in this shape. Okay, like this and like this. All right, so that's how my back leg looks. Okay, and I still need to add seam allowances here, but I have the basic front and back legs traced. Let's take a look at the top of the back leg and the yoke. Now, when we cut this apart, we cut it at the base of the flat felled seam. Well, if we look underneath, the seam is up here. Okay, this is where the base of the seam is on the underside. So that means we have to add the width of this flat felled seam to the top of this leg to account for the fabric that we cut off when we cut it off at the base of the flat felled seam. So if your flat felled seam is on the yoke pattern piece, add the width back on first onto the back leg. Okay. All right, so now that's correct in terms of the actual pattern piece before seam allowance. Now on the yoke, I don't have to add that back in because I didn't cut it off. Remember at the center back, I had to add it back on because I actually cut it off. We're gonna leave it on and we're gonna trace it right like this. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna trace it over here where I have more room. Okay, so I'm just gonna trace it over here on the side. And basically I'm just gonna pin it to the paper. All right, and then I'm just going to use my ruler to make my side seam. Okay, and I'm going to dash across the top. And then I'm going to use my ruler to make a center back seam. And then I'm going to dash across the bottom. All right, let's look and see what we have. That's the basic shape of the yoke. Again, I can use my ruler to smooth out a curve. Okay. All right, so that's the basic shape of the back yoke. This is going to be the side seam, and this is the center back. All right, so that's how you trace the front and back leg and the back yoke. If you have any questions about how to deal with those flat felled seams, please post them below, and I'm really sorry if I confused everybody with that last video showing how to, add the seam allowance in, and that was actually wrong, so I apologize for that. The way I trace the yoke in this video is the correct way to do it. If you need me to help you with that, please let me know. Also, in the next video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to draft a front pocket, okay, from the front leg that looks like this. And I'll also show you how to add seam allowances, and also, we'll deal with the zipper pieces. All right, so that will be the last video in this little mini set of, how to cut your jeans apart and make a pattern. I hope you guys are having a great day, and I will see you again soon.